The views and opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect those of the station, owners, management, and sponsors. If you find any content disagreeable, you may exercise your right to change the channel. And now, a PJ and Friends original series, A More Perfect Union, with your host, Mark Lehner and Darren Vierday.
Pistol that Mr. Zimmerman carried.
Right.
Now, this law, this stand your ground law, is very problematic, and it's been, in a number of cases, there have been really problematic results from it. It actually would allow somebody, for example, in a gang shooting, to say that they felt threatened by somebody else from another gang who was about to shoot them, and thus it would be a self-defense
right. But when those
situation.
When those have been applied to especially people of color that claim that I was just standing my ground, they inadvertently get arrested.
Yeah, the thought experiment of wondering if things had been reversed and it had been George Zimmerman who was the one who was walking through the neighborhood in a hoodie, and Trayvon Martin was the one who had the gun.
Right.
If Trayvon Martin would or would not be in jail is a very interesting one.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's even though it's very, very crucial to understanding this case and looking at the racial makeup that this case has, the fact that there is a supposed slur, racial slur,
yes,
in what Mr. Zimmerman said over the phone.
And in fact, a friend of his tried to explain it away by saying that that the term used was a muttered effing coons, is what it sounds like to me. Yeah. The friend said that it was effing goons. Of course, I would ask the question of how many times is it, and he said it was an endearment. You know, he said, oh, those goons. Well, how many times is the word effing used before a term of endearment?
Right.
B, it's not the word that was used. And C, the problem is, of course, that means it may be considered a hate crime, which means federal intervention would be possible.
Which it is right now.
Which,
the Justice
yeah.
Department is getting involved.
Yeah, they are getting involved. The state has also got involved. They've set up a task force to look into it. I think there's going to be a lot of shakeout from it. But I think to go back to it, apart from all the horror of Trayvon Martin being gone and the horror of the entire situation, this law, this stand your ground law, you kind of look into the genesis of it, and it becomes a very interesting thing to look at.
It's true. Once this was enacted in Florida, and I'll look it up, we'll see if it's 2003 or 2005. I think you're probably right. So, but once that was enacted, a lot of other states followed suit, which is very similar to how a lot of very poorly written and sometimes bad laws in their aim and intention get written and copied in different state legislatures with different sort of aspects, which we'll get into that in a bit. But the stand your ground law, there have been critics that have said that it's a shoot first law.
Even at the time, there were a lot of people who were extremely concerned about it, but of course it was pushed very strongly by the NRA, which is very powerful. It also was written by a group called ALEC, which we talked about on our last show, the American Legislative Exchange Council, which we'll talk a little bit more about. But when you think about the law and who it benefits gun owners, and it benefits gun manufacturers and people who sell guns.
Right.
And those are the people who pushed for this because ALEC is basically a group that takes corporate wish lists of what they want in terms of legislation and then writes it and then passes it on to legislators who will then go ahead and introduce those bills in their states. It's very problematic. A lot of the voter suppression bills, a lot of the anti-union bills we've been seeing have been a result of that. There's a great website called ALEC Exposed, ALEC Exposed, and I think it's .org, but it may be .com. But they have just a laundry list of the different types of legislation, and also the politicians that have been shown to be connected materially with it. But
well, here in Florida, and I just wanted to look it up so I could get her name. A Florida state rep, Rachel Burgeon.
Yeah.
She introduced a bill, HM 717, which
Which then became, I believe, HM 718, didn't it?
Right.
Because it had to be reintroduced the next day.
It did, because she, and this happens a lot in Tallahassee, unfortunately, where you have a part-time legislature that is controlled pretty much by a full-time array of lobbyists.
Yeah.
So what the lobbyists will do is they will write the bills for the representatives, so the representatives can go out and, I don't know, fundraise.
Yeah.
So when they get a bill that's passed over to them, this woman, Representative Rachel Burgeon, she forgot to take out the boilerplate mission statement
Of
that was
ALEC
in
at the
bill,
top, yeah.
at the top of the bill.
So she didn't even bother to, it's not even like she got the ideas and then wrote the legislation. She took the legislation verbatim and included the here, this is ALEC and this is our mission statement at the top, really exposing just how A, lazy, and B, blatantly beholden to groups like ALEC, the legislators are. Now, I don't know about, there are a few Democratic legislators, but this is primarily a Republican thing that takes place. And speaking about lobbyists in Tallahassee, I did not realize this. There was a story on NPR, I believe it was, that covered a woman who worked for, I think, the St. Pete Times, and she's one of the longest serving people covering the state government in Tallahassee, and she was a very confrontational woman. And she's gotten older, so she hasn't been able to do quite as much. But she's the only woman who's, or the only reporter who's ever been able to go to there's an event held every year the night before the legislature convenes in January. And at this event are the governor, the legislators, primarily Republican legislators.
Well, they're in control.
Yes, and lobbyists. And the lobbyists just walk up to legislators and hand them checks because it's not legal to give them checks while the legislature is in session. But right before it starts, they sure can. And
they do.
Boy, and they do. Yeah, so that's a little bit about Florida's legislature.
Yeah, it's a very interesting system. But,
yeah.
Back to this
Stand Your Ground,
law,
yeah.
which came out of this ALEC.
It's kind of a machine. It's a think tank machine.
Yes, machine would be the best way.
They basically write it, they pass it by the corporations that it'll impact, and then they make their changes, and then they send it on to the states.
So now the question is, what happens? We don't know, of course, but you know.
You mean with the case?
Right, with the case. And some people are calling for George Zimmerman to get his concealed weapons permit pulled, which I don't know if that is something that Sanford Police can do as a jurisdiction.
I don't know. One of the things that's very troubling is that people said that he sounded like he was intoxicated at the time, and they did not drug or alcohol test him. They did drug and alcohol test Trayvon Martin's corpse.
Yeah.
They also let him go, and took a statement and let him go. Because he mentioned that that it was an act of self-defense, and because of the Stand Your Ground, it really ties police hands. A lot of police are very opposed to this law because they feel like they aren't able to really investigate a crime because someone can just basically say, "I claim self-defense," and they have to let them walk away because the law is that broad, and that the presumption is that the person who claims self-defense is, and of course we are innocent until proven guilty, or not guilty until proven guilty, but the fact is that it ties the hands of police investigating crimes.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah. So it's a real tragedy that is, I think, just going to get bigger and bigger. Huge rally today in Sanford, delivering petitions demanding that George Zimmerman be arrested. States involved, the feds are involved. A lot of people are saying, why all this focus on this? Well, actually, there was no focus on it when it happened. It just was a group of bloggers and others who picked it up, and some activists, and started to make the media pay attention to this, which actually shows, that activists can really make something happen.
Yeah. When you have tens of thousands of people showing up at Sanford to mourn the life of a 17-year-old, that says something.
It does.
And it wakes people up to realize, in the media, it wakes people up to say, this is a story.
Now, sometimes they don't. I mean, there's, it was very interesting. There was this is kind of a little off the topic, but on Sunday, there was the Reason Rally, which was a huge rally in Washington of atheists and skeptics and others who don't believe that there should be religion in politics, which is somewhat opposed to the GOP presidential candidates' positions. And those tens of thousands, I think they estimated 20,000 people in the rain, barely a mention in the news. Nice story on Reuters, though, about the 300 or so Tea Party members who showed up in the rain to listen to people like Louis Gohmert rail against the Obamacare and the evils of Obamacare on the eve of the Affordable Care Act going before the Supreme Court. So that just shows what our media, when people talk about left-wing media, I'm sorry, but when you don't cover, how many orders of magnitude are we talking? Like 60 more times the number of people at a rally on the same rainy day. I guess it's maybe because the Tea Party people were older and they have a better chance of catching a cold.
It's true.
That, but it's tough for the atheists too because there's no one to say God bless you when they sneeze.
Oh,
which is very tough. Yeah. Speaking as an atheist myself. So.
There was a report that
that's PJ there, buddy.
Yeah, I'm PJ. There was a report that just recently a young white guy was burnt by two black guys in. He's trying to get to where it was at, and. What's scary is, obviously, that's a horrifying thing, but the police in that town are jumping on it right away. And obviously, any crime should be investigated as quickly and as thoroughly as possible. But it's Kansas City, Missouri. White boy set on fire by two black teens, and apparently they followed him home, and he was at his door, trying to get the key in the door, try to get in there. They threw gas on him. They set him on fire, and this is what you get, white boy. And
is this recent? Is this related at all? I wonder.
The only reason I'm saying that is, what's scary is to show the how quickly this was. The police in that town up in arms, looking into it. And this kid's still alive. And granted, horrible still.
Yeah.
But this Trayvon Martin kid, his body was unclaimed for a little while because they wouldn't release it.
And they had his cell phone. They had his cell phone and never called because he had been speaking to his girlfriend right before. If they just hit redial, they would have found out who he was. The thing is,
you can almost picture what happened. Kids these days, this guy is following this kid. He's told not to. Right or wrong, we don't know all. We weren't there. Obviously, everything's not.
There's a lot of facts.
Everything's not looking good. Everything's not looking good for the justification of this. But the kid's being followed. He's scared. He's like any teen, probably mouthing off. But that doesn't mean you get shot. And at some, you figure this guy, if you've looked at his record, Zimmerman calls on a regular basis to the police that I've seen the two and almost everything I've heard.
And he was charged at one point with resisting arrest and battery on a police officer that they then, I think it was battery, might have been assault, that they then rescinded.
Right, but almost everything he's taught, at least for the recordings they've released, because this certainly may be on selective releasing. We don't know if we've heard all of the reports he's made since he's been a neighborhood watch captain, but everything revolved around black males. Always doing something, always appeared to be suspicious, so it does lend that he has a pattern of behavior, at least it appears to be. But then again, you're a neighborhood watch guy, you're gonna, it's not like you're gonna call, hi, have a nice day, so the things you're calling about are obviously things that are...
Well, he was also breaking the rules. You're not supposed to carry a gun in a neighborhood watch. That is one of the rules.
It's kind of like security guards. The security guards are supposed to just report and
now some are allowed to have guns, but yeah.
But I don't think there's. I just can't imagine what happened that was so horrible that he needed to pull a gun and shoot somebody.
I think. Well, who knows? He sounded like he was looking for something.
Right.
Yeah.
And he disobeyed a direct order to stay in his car and not go anywhere.
Although it wasn't so much an order as a, hey, we really don't think you need to do this kind of thing.
Well, because obviously, based on the call, the operator probably wasn't thinking that this guy's going to, if the guy had said, well, I'm armed and I'm following the guy, the order might have been a little more severe.
Yeah,
hey, no, back off, versus, we don't need you doing that, because I don't know, maybe if you are carrying a weapon, you make that call, hey, I'm armed.
Yeah.
Might change the outcome.
And hopefully the facts will come out. I mean, there's a pretty huge smear campaign going on against Trayvon Martin.
Well, you just showed me the Orlando Sentinel article where they pretty much recount the Sanford Police Department's account in Zimmerman's story, and they've leaked some interesting details about Trayvon, that he was suspended from school because they found an empty marijuana baggie.
Yeah, it had residue, marijuana residue in it.
Something like that, yep.
Which is not, that's not not a capital offense, at least at this point. But no,
not yet.
But
not in this country.
No, but the thing about it is that they're smearing him, and the police. Somebody leaked the police report, which they're not supposed to do. Mm-hmm. They're also not supposed to release information about a juvenile and why they've been suspended from school. That's very inappropriate. Right. His mother just came out and said, they killed him, and now they're trying to destroy his reputation as well, because the people who want to defend George Zimmerman are trying to demonize the victim. Well, which is, it's like what happened to Sandra Fluke with Rush Limbaugh. You take somebody who is trying to speak up for something, and then you try to destroy their character, or you take a victim of a crime and you try to destroy their character in order to.
Sandra Fluke's case, Sandra Fluck.
Fluck, that's right.
Say
Fluck.
her name right.
Actually, Fluck.
Fluck.
It's a very tough.
Whatever.
Because Rush Limbaugh, after he learned it wasn't Fluke, said Fluck, which sounds a lot like another word without the L in it, but it's Fluck.
But they take her argument and why she was testifying in front of Congress, and they completely
misrepresent
it.
Yeah. And then they call her all these horrible names,
right.
and then it gets picked up as a meme by others, and it really, this is what happens with the media not really looking for truth, but instead just reporting the incidences of things,
or trying to report both sides.
Both sides,
really,
when there isn't a both sides.
Not a both sides on this one.
Yeah.
There's a 17-year-old child that is dead.
Yeah.
And that's the side of it, and to figure out what's going on with that. But there's so many, like there's let me find this one. There's a guy that is part of the Andrew Breitbart sphere of influence. It's the
late
blogger.
Lamented.
Right, late lamented.
Andrew Breitbart.
Yes. But it's
if anybody doesn't know him, he ran a website called BigGovernment.com, BigHollywood.com. Was the one who posted the Shirley Sherrod, who is the agriculture person who worked for the agriculture department, and misquoted her words to make it look like she was a African American woman who was a racist. Of course, she wasn't. She was showing how she had racist feelings, and that she realized that they were wrong.
Right.
He also was the one who abetted James O'Keefe in his undercover stings of Acorn and Planned Parenthood, both of which turned out to again be selectively edited to make things look worse. And Acorn, which may have had problems, was one of the few organizations actually helping poor people and people of color with their ability to vote. And I think we'll probably talk a little bit about voting, because that gets back to Alec again.
But there's a blogger named Dan Reel who he posted a picture of Trayvon and then posted the official picture of Trayvon and said that they darkened this picture, or they lightened it to make him look whiter, to make him look okay.
What's the point?
Right.
What does that care?
Well, if you look at the Miami Herald article that he's linking to, linking to, I don't know if I said linking, but it actually says in the article that the photo is of a poster that was at a rally.
Yeah.
So, of course it's going to look darker because it's a low-resolution printout of a photo.
Right.
So, here's a blogger who is, not really well-known, but well-known in his own little sphere of influence, who is trying to dismantle this horrible story where you have a law that needs to be repealed, retooled, something. Yeah. But instead of coming out and saying, wow, this law, the Stand Your Ground law, was wrong, well, now it's all a conspiracy.
I'm surprised they don't show images of Ahmadinejad giving a speech and then just intersperse little pictures of Trayvon, like Rick Santorum's PAC just did. Rick Santorum's Super PAC did an ad of President Obama. They pulled a Max Cleland, which is they did. I don't know if anybody remembers, but when Max Cleland, who had lost 3 limbs in Vietnam, was running for re-election in Georgia, his opponent, Saxby Chambliss, ran something where he morphed Max Cleland's face into the face of Osama bin Laden. And there's Rick Santorum's Super PAC is running something where they called Obamaville, where they basically show Ahmadinejad speaking and then intersperse very quickly pictures of Obama. And they said if they were trying to conflate the two of them, they would have shown Obama for longer. And it's like, are you kidding? But that's the thing. People play with images. Right. People play with language to try to deceive. And the fact is that if we aren't careful, if we aren't really aware of what's going on, which is one of the things I hope that we'll be able to do, is help people spot some of these things so that when someone's out there trying to trick you, and that there are places that you can go to find a little bit of truth.
And the other thing, too, this is one of those instances where your vote really and truly does count, because we elect these state representatives and state senators over and over again. A lot of people just go and they pull the lever for D or they pull the lever for R, and they just say, "Oh, well, he'll be fine. He'll be okay."
Yeah, my state senator, Gary Siplin, who just is one of the sponsors of a law to allow out loud prayer to be led in school, which I am vehemently against. I think that it's perfectly a moment of silence, perfectly fine. After school clubs, if you want to have them, that's fine. But no, I am sorry because no particular religion, and that's one of the things that's going on in this country right now, is there's a big debate about, is this a quote unquote Christian nation that so my own senator, who's a Democrat, has done things that I find repugnant. My representative, Corinne Brown, who I think votes the way I would vote on a lot of issues, still opposed having her district redrawn so that she would not have basically a position for life as a representative, because she actually sued against the amendments that we had passed. Yep. And I find it very upsetting that people, they care more about themselves and their power and their positions, and it's on Democrats and Republican sides. I just think that the policies of Republicans tend to be slightly more hideously onerous than
the religious side of it. Like, aside from the stand your ground law, that is on its face a very poor law, and what we're seeing right now, and we're going to see it, this is not going to go away. It's going to get worse. The Black Panthers, actually, the new Black Panthers, have put a $10,000 bounty out on Mr. Zimmerman's.
Yeah, and the new Black Panthers, of course, are a fringe organization. I think there's like 3 guys in it or something like that.
They're mainly like 3 guys that you'll see a lot on Fox to scare old white people.
Well, that's the thing, is that these groups, they want attention,
right? And
so they do something, and of course what it does is it undermines the tens of thousands who are peacefully demonstrating.
Of course,
yeah.
But you can understand where their rage comes from. I can understand that.
Sure.
This is going to be a very onerous situation. I like that.
It's going to also be very tough because the president has waded into it. Some of the presidential candidates have waded into it. Newt Gingrich basically said it doesn't matter what color they are, and of course, Newt Gingrich is,
I thought Newt Gingrich was the smart one.
He really is not.
He was the smart one.
No, he's not. Although I don't know that any of them are really the smart one.
He's trying to win a southern state again. So he's
trying to win a southern state. So he's dog whistle politics. He's trying to appeal to the people who have some issues with race.
So you have a lot of folks that are trying to draw at anything, like, oh, they darkened the photo. Oh, there's an empty marijuana bag. Oh, there's this. Oh, there's that. Just to cloud up the waters enough. So when the story eventually goes away, they still have the stand your ground law in the books. They still have their representatives and their senators that will vote for more legislation that is poor like this, just like they're doing right now with women's health.
Oh my gosh. The women's health laws, I mean, if you're a woman in this country, please vote, and vote Democratic. I'm not saying the Democrats are a perfect party, but oh my word, they are making it. I mean, they are going back to Rick Santorum, demonizing birth control.
Here's the great thing about voting for your state representatives and your state senators, especially if they are challengers or if they've been incumbents in there for 1 or 2 years. Their campaigns are so small. You can actually go down to their campaign events. You can actually go and call them on their cell phones, which they freely give out. And you can ask them directly and see what their answer is on women's health issues. So it doesn't matter if they have a D or an R. Yeah, I'd love for you to vote Democratic. Yay, good. But it doesn't matter if they have a D or an R after their name.
Mm-hmm.
If you can call them up, if you can contact them and see them face to face and look them in the eye, you'll know. And then you're doing your part to send somebody to your state capital,
right,
wherever you are, to helpfully not make this happen. Some of these bills are just insane. You have the governor of Pennsylvania talking about a transvaginal ultrasound.
Now, he said it was not a transvaginal, but which of course means the fetus is so small that it cannot be seen by the type of one that you've seen on television, where they put the jelly on the belly and they rub the thing. You have to actually insert something into the woman's vagina to be able to see the fetus. So there was a big deal with it in Virginia because it mandated transvaginal ultrasounds, and they changed the language because Bob McDonnell, who's the governor of Virginia, desperately wants to be. If you ever watch Rachel Maddow, and I highly recommend her show, he desperately wants to be the vice presidential candidate.
Oh, Mitt Romney desperately wants to be the presidential candidate.
Exactly.
So they're a perfect pair.
Yes, and they both have excellent hair. I mean, really excellent hair.
Yes.
But Bob McDonnell and Tom Corbett also, they passed a similar law mandating ultrasounds, and that the image of the ultrasound be turned and put in a place where the woman would be able to see it.
Yeah.
And they said that this was, some people asked him about this, and he said,
well, they can just close their eyes.
They can just close their eyes, right. which shows a lot of sensitivity. I mean, there are a lot of men passing these bills. There are a lot of men testifying on in Congress about the effects of this. It's really, and this is a woman's issue. And we're men and we're talking about it, but it's women's bodies. I personally believe that a woman has the choice to do what she wants to with her body. I think that birth control should be cheap and easily available, so that people can do the responsible thing beforehand. I'm not wild about the notion of an abortion, but I also think that it's a woman's choice. And what's happening is, even though it's legal to have an abortion in this country, the people who oppose abortion have devised a lot of ways to chip away and to make it much more difficult to do. So, for example, you've got waiting periods, where, in fact, in one of the states, and I can't remember off the top of my head, there is now a 72-hour waiting period. So you have to go to the doctor, tell them that you want an abortion, go and come back 3 days later. Now, if you are somebody who lives, for example, in Mississippi, there's one abortion clinic in Mississippi.
Yep.
It's in Jackson, Mississippi.
In the
entire state. So if you want to have an abortion, you have to go to Jackson if you live somewhere else, and then you have to come back again 3 days later. So if you don't have a lot of money, it's going to be very difficult to do that. There are other ones where they mandate the sonograms. The sonograms you have to pay for on top of the cost of the medical procedure. There's a war on Planned Parenthood, which does 3% of what they do
not according to
is abortion.
John Kyle.
No, John Kyle said it was 90%. 97?
97.
Yeah, he got that completely wrong. But they are the leading provider of abortions in the country, but it is a legal procedure. But most of what they do is basic women's health care. But there is a war against them, and the people who oppose abortion and oppose basically women's autonomy over their bodies have waged a very effective stealth campaign to do a lot of things to make it more difficult, to defund groups that do it. It's the same thing they did. They've wanted to vote to erode voting rights, so they're passing laws to do that, and they also destroy organizations that will be able to fight it, like Acorn. And so what they do is they try to turn them into an enemy, so that people go, oh, they're horrible, and then they destroy them.
Right. Or they make it impossible for an organization to mount a voter registration drive. Like in the state of Florida, you have 48 hours to turn in your ballot or your voter registration form.
And if there's anything wrong with them, you can be fined.
And you have to be a registered agent to register people.
Yeah, the Scouts used to sign people up. The League of Women Voters used to sign people up, and they're too concerned. Yeah, personally. And it's become so onerous that new people are not being registered, and of course, that benefits the Republican Party because people who vote Republican tend to be more well off, although in some states they are not, no. And I don't know if you've seen it. Alexandra Pelosi, who's Nancy Pelosi's daughter, yes, but is a documentarian, did a little bit for Bill Maher's show Real Time, where she went to Mississippi, and she also did a thing countervailing. She did a thing in New York where she basically interviewed people outside the welfare office saying, "I want that Obama money," and things like that. I don't want to work. I want the money. So the problem is on both sides. But she went to Mississippi and she asked people, and she said, "I don't want the government money." And the people in Mississippi were like, she said to them, "But you get food stamps." And, "Well, I deserve it.
I deserve that.
I don't have employment."
Right.
And then she said to somebody else, "Now, you've voted for the Republicans over and over again, and it really hasn't done anything for you." And he said, "But it might." But she said, "But it hasn't." And he was like, "But it might." And that it's the lottery approach, I guess. Yeah. It's the notion that maybe next time I'll get rich.
Well, also Americans don't really know what their actual economic status is. They all think that they're in
they're
the
close
upper middle class and they're almost there. They just need that one thing to push them over the edge. So that's why taxes should be low for rich people, because I want to be there someday.
Right. And my thought would be, if you want that, then lobby for it when you get there. Mm-hmm. But until you're there, you might as well try to do what helps you survive. And it's getting harder and harder for Americans to survive because more and more wealth is traveling upward, has been for the past 30 years. And we have a huge wealth gap in this country that people don't want to talk about. Mitt Romney said it should be talked about in quiet rooms.
Smoke-filled rooms.
Yes. Well, no. But he said we shouldn't talk about these things. They're unseemly.
Right.
Like talking about how much money he has is unseemly.
But he goes out and talks about it. He says he's done well. So good for him. I'm glad he's done well.
But in Florida, there are a number of bills that are all over the country. I believe they said close to 1,000 bills to restrict choice and women's health were introduced at the state level in 2011, which was the first year after that election of 2010, where a lot of states went red in terms of the governor and both houses of the legislature. Virginia has done things to make abortion clinics actually have facilities that are physically impossible for them to have, or to put hospital level facilities. Not even because I've had outpatient surgeries. Yeah, I've had outpatient surgery that happens in a little facility that does not, they're not. They don't have to have hospital standards. They're different. They're outpatient facilities. That's what abortion clinics have, is similar to them. Well, they've rewritten the law in Virginia to make it so that these clinics have to have not like the outpatient clinic type thing. They didn't make all of them have to suddenly conform to something. Just abortion clinics to make it impossible for them to do it. So what they're doing is just trying to create higher and higher hurdles because they haven't been able to overturn the law. Although with the Supreme Court we have, and especially, again, people, your vote is really important. For president, it's really important because the next president is going to pick a Supreme Court justice. Ruth Bader Ginsburg
maybe 2 or 3.
Is old, maybe 2 or 3. And this court right now is already perhaps the most conservative court that we have ever had. It certainly is the most conservative that we had in about 60 years.
I will say this. It's the Supreme Court, it's the only one that I can think of historically that its members are so open about going and aligning themselves politically.
Mm-hmm.
Most of your Supreme Court justices were apolitical. They never aligned themselves with any.
Well, that's also the problem that's happened, and it really happened, I think, since Robert Bork, in that the past history of a Supreme Court, more very political people. I mean, there have always been political people appointed, but they generally, left their politics at the door, which is kind of why you saw some drift sometimes of people who got on the court, like a John Paul Stevens. When he came on the court, he was a Republican appointee. He was very conservative. He said he didn't really change. The court changed around him. It just moved further and further to the right because it's become harder and harder to confirm anybody who really is liberal. And both sides have kind of contributed to this. I mean, Clarence Thomas should never have ended up on the Supreme Court. He's phenomenally conservative. But Joe Biden was one of the people who helped get him on there. So you really can't, but this rightward drift, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, very likely Anthony Kennedy, perhaps one other, will either retire or pass in the time. What's happened, of course, is that younger and younger justices and more ideological justices who are very careful, though, not to leave a paper trail that shows them as conservative as they are. And they lie. I mean, a book just came out that showed that Justice Rehnquist lied when he was being confirmed about something that he would have voted on, and then was open about it afterwards.
It's not very nice to have your Chief Justice lie under oath.
No, and at the time he was an associate justice, I think.
Still.
And then he was elevated. But you've also got John Roberts, who said it was all about balls and strikes, and then yet when the Citizens United case came, he widened it to include much more than the original case pertained to, and basically threw open the door to all the super PACs. Which
see how well that's working.
It's working really well, because democracy is free speech, and free speech is money. So money is democracy. Really? I didn't know that, but
I don't have a lot of democracy.
So we've kind of jumped a little bit off topic from where we were, but we were at the state level. We were talking about state legislatures.
Yes.
Florida state legislature, women.
Yeah, and if you elect, like I said, it's very easy to go out and get involved with your local campaigns. First of all, your local campaign, if you find somebody that's running for office that you feel like they got a good chance, then go out and help them. They'll love to have you. They'll love to have you.
Yeah.
And secondly, you'll be able to say, okay, out of 120 representatives, I know that I helped elect one that is on the up and up at least, whether it's a Democrat or Republican. Because there's some Republicans in the state legislature. What's his name? Mike Fasano, who I wouldn't agree with, but I have to say that when the prison privatization bill came up, and it looked like it was going to pass, where they were going to take 11 correctional facilities in the state of Florida and turn them over to Geo Group, who is one of the biggest political contributors to Florida state politics, by the way. I wonder why.
I know.
They were going to turn them over there, and then all their guards would be private guards.
Union contracts would be abrogated,
course,
all of that, yeah.
But Senator Fasano stood up and said, nope, this is not going to pass.
And what happened to him after he did that? He was stripped of all his committee chairmanships and all his committee positions by his party, because they said he was not rowing in the right direction.
Right, which I would rather have a Republican like that than 10 Democrats that were...
In New York State, there's a Republican who's running in an area that's more blue than it was because of redistricting. He's going to be running, but he went to an equal rights rally and told the women there, "Give your money to Democrats because my party is waging a war on women."
Oh, I remember seeing that. Yes.
And he told them, "Give your money to Democrats because the Republicans are going to try to erode your ability to control your own bodies." I mean, there is this biblical notion that men control women, and that women's bodies and progeny and what they do with them is the province of the man to tell them what to do with them.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I know. Hey, man. Yeah. But the fact is that I personally disagree with that. I would hope that many women would also disagree with that. I would hope that most men would disagree with that notion as well. But that is kind of the GOP position right now, is that, and these personhood bills that have been introduced at the state level, which would make a fertilized egg a person, which would actually outlaw most forms of hormonal birth control because those prevent implantation. So anything other than a barrier method or the rhythm method would be problematic.
Well, again, it's the lack of understanding, whether it's through laziness or ignorance, a chosen ignorance, to look at the science behind the legislation that is being passed.
Yeah.
To know for a fact, I would bet you that a lot of legislators that are passing these, well, we'll require an ultrasound before an abortion, are thinking of the wand on the tummy idea.
Yeah.
They're not going into it, and they're like trans V. They don't even.
No,
they don't even want to say it.
No, they don't want to say the word.
Yeah.
No.
So the same thing with the personhood bill. Like, well, how will it really apply? No, you're just getting boilerplate information from whatever lobbyist group is handing it to you.
I mean, Mitt Romney was completely flummoxed about it.
Right.
But luckily, you can just shake up Mitt Romney for a second and change what he says.
Oh, I forgot to bring my Etch-a-Sketch.
I know. The Etch-a-Sketch candidate, which is a kind of a perfect... and it was, of course, Romney's own... John Fugelsang, who is a wonderful comedian, and if you're on Twitter, you can follow him. It's JOHNFUGELSANG. He is terrific. He was on CNN, and he's the one who asked the question about, well, he's tacking so far to the right, Mitt Romney, in this, to win the nomination. Can he then just, how is he going to get back to the middle for the election? And the person said, well, it's like you hit a restart button. This was one of Romney's campaign aides. You hit a restart button. And it's like an Etch-a-Sketch. You kind of shake it up and you start over. And that is Mitt Romney. He is, he has constantly done this throughout his career because all he wants is to be president. I think it's a daddy issue thing because his father, George Romney, who probably would have been a good president, believed in civil rights and things like that.
And unions.
Made a very unfortunate comment about having been brainwashed by the generals when he went to Vietnam because the generals told him everything was going great, and then he went and saw for himself, and it wasn't. And he came back, and it was sort of like, any of those gaffes that someone makes that really is not. Right now, you could say that, and it would be fine. But at the time, it was a huge thing, and it cost him the chance at the presidency. And I think Mitt has always wanted to fulfill his father. It's like how George W. Bush wanted to finish off Iraq because his daddy didn't take care of it, and Saddam tried to kill his daddy. Daddy issues, man.
The man cannot sing and needs to stop singing and embarrassing himself.
And I heard a woman the other day on one of the podcasts that I listen to, a political podcast. I think it's called, the one I was listening to was Best of the Left, which is a great podcast, bestoftheleft.com. Great podcast, kind of compiles a lot of different things. Said that President Obama's commercials should simply consist of him singing a little bit of Al Green.
So in love with you.
And just and the panties will drop all over America, and every woman will rush out to vote for him. So I don't know that singing is really a requirement for the presidency.
Find this person. Oh, here, Eric Fernstrom, a longtime advisor to Mr. Romney.
I also wonder if he's the same one who made the comment. I'm trying to remember what it was, way back, and it was like an unnamed staffer who made the comment. I'm trying to remember about Romney. I'll try to recollect what it is at the moment. It's not jumping into my head, but it was another one of those like really unfortunate things that told a little bit too much truth about the candidate.
Is it the fact that he's friends with NASCAR owners?
No, he said that himself. And I don't care about poor people. He said that himself.
Yeah.
He says lots of things, himself. But
he will be the nominee.
He's going to be the nominee, and it's going to be very interesting to see how the American people react to to that.
There is a slight possibility that we could see the first brokered Republican convention since 1948, when they nominated Thomas Dewey? No. Yes, Thomas Dewey to go up against Harry Truman. That was the first brokered convention in a very, very long time.
Yeah.
So we may see something like that happen in Tampa. Newt Gingrich has vowed to stay in it, although I don't see how he can, becoming
only
third
if
place.
his Vegas millionaire Sheldon Adelson keeps
True.
shelling out money. And Sheldon Adelson is really like a one-issue guy. He's in Israel. I mean, he's a strong Israel hawk. He doesn't want the settlements to go away. He's doesn't really want the Palestinians around at all. And he is extremely concerned that whoever gets elected be not just in favor of Israel, but rabidly so. He's a big backer of Benjamin Netanyahu things. So yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah, so-
Rick Santorum seems to still continue in the race, even though the stuff that he says is completely out of touch in a lot of ways.
Well, it's horrifying because he is literally conflating religion and politics. He is taking, and this is something that's been happening a lot from the right for a long time. Is people said that this notion of a separation of church and state is incorrect. That the founders never intended that. That this was founded as a Christian nation, founded on Judeo-Christian values, and that it is meant to be that. Now, I frankly don't see any reason why it's any different from our decrying Sharia law to imagine that kind of a law based solely on Christianity should be what we follow.
Well, Mark, we're not a Muslim nation.
We're not. I also
We're
don't
a
believe.
Christian.
I believe we are a pluralistic nation that tolerates and allows all religions, as foolish as they might be, to share their ideas in the public marketplace. But most of the founders were deists, and they believed they didn't believe that God intervened on a regular basis.
No.
They believed that God created the world, set it in motion, and then it will end. And they believed they were Enlightenment people. And if there's anything that the GOP seems opposed to right now, it is the Enlightenment. Because when you fight science at every turn, when you try to roll back human rights, when you try to conflate religion and politics,
When you try to
you're anti-Enlightenment.
bring school prayer back into public schools.
Thank you, Senator Siplin.
When you
honestly,
try to, the man wears nice hats.
does he?
Oh my God, he's
Really
awesome.
nice hats.
Yeah,
Sharp,
he's awesome.
sharp dresser.
He's a really
He-
a swell
he's
guy.
he's
He really
an
is a
injury
swell
intern.
guy.
He's a swell. Yeah.
He's a swell. He's
Yeah.
a swell guy. I'm telling you. But
I got to dress very well. I just did a production of Head of Gobbler. I got to dress very well. It was very nice to dress
Good.
well. Now I'm in my hoodie.
oh, that's true. Hey, good,
Yeah.
good. I'm in my tie.
Yep.
As always.
Mhm.
I have a vintage tie shop on Etsy now. It's really
Well, you're a young Democrat. And that's
Yes, I am.
important to.
nice. To wear a very wide tie from 1976.
There you go.
Montgomery Wards. Thank you.
It's got red, white, and blue,
It's true.
and an eagle. I
And
think that's an eagle,
That's
isn't
an
it?
eagle. Yeah.
What's in its claws?
A shield that says 76.
A shield that says 76. That's
Yeah.
very nice.
Yeah.
It looked like blood, something bloody. I thought
Right.
it was a squirrel or
It,
something.
it might be.
It's
something.
or a bunny.
It might be a bloody squirrel.
Little-
in
little
the shape
bloody
of
bunny.
a shield with 76. It might be 76.
Little bunnies in there.
Little bunnies in there, which is
That's a
what
huge eagle.
which is what Muslim eagles get when they go to heaven.
They do. They get
little-
76 virgin-
little virgin bunnies.
virgin
to
bunnies. Yep.
eat. I forgot what I was talking about. Anyway, that's yes.
Sorry. We were talking about politics, I think.
Oh yeah, we were. Yes, we were. Well, we should probably tell everybody to check on the website. PJ knows where that
A
is.
moreperfectunionshow.com.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
And
tune
PJ
in.
also sent an article, which was a really good link that we'll put on the website about some kind of a racist cop in New Orleans who made a statement that Trayvon Martin was a thug and deserved to die,
I saw
like that. Yep.
Yep.
Which is going to happen. Whenever an incident like this comes out, you get kind of a roiling of the waters and a lot of people's emotions come up. I mean, President Obama has done it. There's a lot of people who have made some really inappropriate comments who shouldn't.
Well, again, these are people that were staunchly behind a stand your ground law being enacted. They're staunchly behind gun ownership and the right to bear arms, which is in the Constitution.
Yeah. But
that doesn't mean you should go around, enacting your vigilante fantasies like you're Dirty Harry.
Right.
But, if it's in the Constitution, sure, you should own a gun.
And I'll say something. I will say something honestly. My street where I live in Pine Hills, which is not the best part of town. I live on a road that is not part of a subdivision, and it used to be a dirt road. It's now not, but it is a dead end road, and people used to come down the street, and I know there were drug transactions that were happening because we would find stuff by the street down at the end. Mm-hmm. Prostitution was happening. It was very concerning. And one night I was coming home from something, probably from SAC, actually, having done an improv show. But I was coming home, and there was like an SUV parked at the end of the street. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go see what's going on. So I drove down to the end of the street, and I rolled down the window, and I was like, what are you guys doing here? And the guy said, well, my grandmother lives over here, and now there was a chain where he had parked his car that was kind of on the other side of the street, and a chain link fence, and it was locked. But it looked like he was trying to open the lock, not trying to lock it up. Because basically he said that he pulled out because they were going out to party. And they had a lot of party materials in the vehicle and stuff, which was fine. I'm not like that. But I thought these guys are doing the same thing. They're, a drug deal or something, or they're waiting for somebody. And so I called 911. I waited in the car. But then it turned out that he did live there, and I felt awful about it. And I'd gotten very, snarky and stuff like that. And he was very, he really was because he knew he was right, for one thing. And he was basically calling me, white guy, just want to mess, if they were white, I wouldn't have done it. And I said, no, I would have, I didn't care. I don't care who it is. I really just don't want people doing this stuff on my street. I don't like it. So I sort of understand that mindset. I would never carry a gun. I would never, and I tried to be circumspect in the way that I did things. I called the police and waited for them and stuff like that. And I said that I was sorry afterwards. And the guys had a lot of fun at my expense, I think, because they were able to kind of tease and stuff because they knew that they were not in a bad position. But at the same time, I sort of understand the mentality that makes you want to protect the area that you live in and not see it used as a place for crime, So I understand it, but the level of extremity that people are going to basically want to be vigilantes, to be Chuck Norris, who's a lovely, lovely man.
Well, you're seeing this law blow up in their faces, and to save face in order to say, no, this law is great, this law is awesome, this is exactly what we need, then they're using this 17-year-old child.
Yeah. Well, even the guy who sponsored the law, the senator who sponsored the law originally, said that this law...
Ocala.
Yeah, said that this... Oh, Ocala. What a lovely... Cliff Stearns, also from Ocala. We'll talk about him a little bit in a minute. But yeah, he said that this law shouldn't apply, that it's not just a wherever you are law. But the problem is the way it's written, it sure is a wherever you are law. But Ocala, just the villages are located in Ocala. The villages are just a place outside where snowbirds come, and it is you'll see the Republican candidates will go there during the
Mitt Romney. That's where he sang America.
That's where he sang America the Beautiful. It is a huge community of white people. Most of them middle class to upper middle class, older white people who have moved here from up north. Very conservative, drive around in customized golf carts. And my wife actually, or an in-law of mine had bought a house there, or was thinking of buying a house there. My wife went with my mother and father-in-law when my mother-in-law was still alive. And they were showing her all the different churches that she could go to. They were like, here's the Baptist church, here's this church, and she was like, where's the shul, where's the temple? And they were like, what do you mean? Well, I have some friends who are Jewish who might want to worship, and they were like, I think there's one in Ocala. And then she asked, and a mosque? Is there a mosque? And no, I don't know. I have no idea where the mosque is. So you get an idea what it's like. But Ocala, Cliff Stearns, is the man who has been on I will call it a jihad against Planned Parenthood, who demanded that they produce like every piece of billing paperwork going back 20 years, I believe it was, all like tabbed and highlighted. An impossible task, really, and it was that investigation that gave Susan G. Komen for the Cure, the breast cancer group, the
flimsy premise.
The flimsy premise that they used to defund Planned Parenthood.
Yep.
Cliff Stearns also has just come out as a birther, which is awesome. Lovely Florida. You know what? The man is the president. He is the president of the United States, and you're not going to be able to undo that, with all of the things that you're trying to do. Although I have heard that now people are looking into Mitt Romney because his grandfather was, or his father was born in Mexico. So
which is also ridiculous.
Well, there's a notion that if either of your parents were not born in the United States, you are not a natural-born citizen.
Right, but that's false.
That's false.
That's why it's completely ridiculous.
That is completely false, and that shows where people are on their ability to read the Constitution.
No. Again, well, just to look at basic facts and accept that basic facts will come up and make you incorrect on a lot of the things that are proposing.
Yeah, it's very distressing to see the level of misinterpretation of the Constitution that's happening. I mean, it is a document that is open to be interpreted, like the Bible.
It's also a document that's open to being amended.
Yes, it is open to being amended, although it's a very hard process. And some people have talked about a constitutional convention, which would open up everything, which is a little scary because
it would be like an Etch-a-Sketch for the country.
It would be like an Etch-a-Sketch, shake up the country, and off we go. So we're coming just about to the end of our hour, I think. Mm-hmm. Are there any final thoughts?
Go out and vote. Orlando, if you're in Orlando and you might be in a municipality that's following suit, Orlando city elections are April 5th. That's another chance for you to go out and actually meet your candidates and actually talk to them face to face before you decide to put your vote where you think everybody else is going to put their vote. I have who I'm voting for in Orlando, and I'll keep that to myself. The people that are running know who I support.
Very nice.
I won't say anything about
also,
that.
get active. There's going to be a lot of different things coming up. Occupy is gearing up again.
Occupy is geared up. It never went away.
No.
I mean, it diminished because of the cold, but it's there. It's still up.
Yep.
The police are still being brutal to
There was actually an anti-police brutality protest at Union Square in New York.
That got broken up.
That was broken up, and they broke a 16-year-old kid's arm. So Mayor Bloomberg has also said that Goldman Sachs is very important to New York, and he basically has called the police department his private army. So that's very nice, Mr. 1%. Yeah. So there's a lot of things to do. If you feel like some really long reading, there's a wonderful letter to the SEC that was written by Occupy people talking about the financial regulation. It's like 350 pages, but it's point by point looking at what went wrong with financial regulation, why the financial regulations we have aren't strong enough, and why we at least need to enforce the ones that are now on the books. It's just incredible. But there's, voting is important, your activity is important, your voice is important, and your questions are important. And when we do our show next week, hopefully we'll have a show next Monday.
I think so.
Maybe at 8, maybe at 9, I don't know. We'll be talking. But you can either tweet questions to AMPU Show, AMPU Show, or there's also a form on the website, which is a more Perfect Union Show.
Yeah, there's Facebook. Go to moreperfectunionshow.com. You can friend us on Facebook, and you can follow us there. That'd be
Great,
the best
and you
place
can
to
put
go.
your questions, and we'll address them next week.
Yeah. And next week you'll be able to call in.
And I would not suggest fashion tip questions for either of us, but perhaps Senator Siplin would be the person to ask for fashion
Senator
advice.
Siplin dresses very well.
He's a good dresser.
He's a smart dresser.
Because when he was in school, he led a prayer for everybody to have good clothes.
Yeah.
And he wants that back.
Droopy drawer.
But for us, not the best dressers in the world, but hopefully we're helpful.
I'll wear a
in,
better tie next time. How's
yeah.
that?
And hopefully we'll also be able to answer some of your questions about things that are bugging you.
Yeah. So
Thanks
get
a
off
lot.
your ass. Get involved.
That's right. Because we are moving this country toward a more perfect union. That's what the founders wanted, and that's what we're trying to help do.
And that's our show title.
Thank you,
Next
everybody.
time.
You are listening to A More Perfect Union on pjandfriends.com.
All right, you've been listening to A More Perfect Union on pjandfriends.com. Stay tuned next week for round 2.